Supply chain security, how moving accountability upstream helps and hurts MSSPs. And sign language, how to write effective security services contracts. That and the latest news and trends in the managed security space coming right up on Cyber for Hire. Building bridges between managed security providers and their clients, it's the podcast where MSSPs, vCISOs, and end users take a united stand against cybercrime. This is Cyber for Hire. Struggling to monitor the growing threat landscape, pressure to reduce costs, security skill gaps, facing compliance issues? These issues can translate to operational, financial, regulatory, and reputational risks to your business. Checkpoint can help. Checkpoint combines an MSSP enablement program, cloud-delivered multi-tenant management, SOC platform, and superior threat intelligence capabilities to give MSSPs the confidence to grow profitably at a reduced risk. Checkpoint is 100% channel-driven. We partner to deliver the best security everywhere. Visit msspalert.com/checkpoint. All right, welcome friends to episode number 29 of Cyber for Hire. How's everybody doing today? I'm Bradley Barth with SC Media in New York, and joining me today, just an hour and a half drive away on I-95, is my guest co-host for the day, Joshua Marpet, CEO of MGM Growth and co-host of the Paul Security Weekly podcast. Josh, thanks for filling in this week. Really appreciate it. Now, this will be our last show before the early August trifecta of Black Hat, DEF CON, and Vegas B-Sides. Josh, I know you are a B-Sides Global Council member, so is there anything in particular you're looking forward to at Vegas this year? Also, along with that, we all know that DEF CON has this particular reputation of being the place where certain hackers like to cause a little mischief and trouble, whether it's, unlocking hotel rooms or hacking ATMs or, all those great epic stories. So what's the most paranoid thing you do when you go to a show like that in Vegas?
Lots of things. DEF CON is the saying is it's the most hostile network in the world when you're there. And it's not untrue. However, the DEF CON people, the labs people, go through an amazing amount of work to provide secure wireless for people. Cell phone, not so much. There was one year I was there, we measured an extra 45 cell towers, I think, that weren't there the week before DEF CON, during DEF CON. So it's awkward. But typically when I go, I just turn off Bluetooth on everything I own, whether I'm taking it or not. And I turn off Wi-Fi, and I use either cell exclusive on a burner, or honestly, a lot of times I just turn everything off. The only thing I do is maybe bring a device with signal on it. In years past, it would be Twitter, but this year with X, I'm not sure what will happen. Now, I'm not going to be in Vegas this year, so I shouldn't even really talk about it. I have a 1-year-old, and since she's a little too young to be vaccinated, and we've got a reservation at the beach, we're going to the beach. And frankly, it's a much more pleasant patch of sand than Vegas, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, no, I mean, you can't turn down an opportunity to go to the beach, especially with the major heat wave that we've been having lately. So that sounds like pretty nice alternate plans. I remember the year that I went to DEF CON, I was like super paranoid. I just felt like I was, just eyeing everybody, giving everybody the side eye. And then I remember like having everything set up and having the whole routine of how I was going to stay secure. And then the second I opened up my laptop for the first time, it started almost automatically connecting to the local network. And I was like, oh, no, disconnect. And I was like, how did I miss that? And then I had to take quick action there. But I mean, those are always the ones where you just feel like, you're almost justified in wearing that tinfoil hat. So
if you're worried, go to the information desk. One of the SOC goons will help you set up your devices properly. They're really, really nice. They're really helpful. They're lovely people. Okay. And honestly, it depends on what you want to do. If you want to party, go to DEF CON. If you want to learn some really cool stuff, go to B-Sides Vegas. If you want to meet very high prestige speakers, go to DEF CON Talks. The villages are insane. And
great.
Frankly, Black Hat is where you go to be a business person. It's a networking event. That's what it's for.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's definitely a little something for everyone across the three events. So it should be interesting to see what happens this year. All right, more banter later, but first, a quick heads up to our listeners. Cyber for Hire will be going on hiatus for the month of August, so this will be our last episode for a little while, but we will return with new shows and new guests this fall. All right, so we've got a jam-packed show for you as always, but some news just can't wait, which is why we want to begin by sharing what's top of mind today. So here's your headline. Just days ago, a trio of MSSP, MSP, and professional services firms announced the launch of the Managed Service Providers for the Protection of Critical Infrastructure, a nonprofit organization whose objective, in their words, is to keep government bodies, the defense industrial base, and members of the critical infrastructure sector informed of how external MSSPs and MSPs can help keep their operations secure, functional, and resilient. According to the organization's press release, the alliance aims to define the requirements for external service providers handling or processing controlled unclassified information, and it also intends to openly share best practices, industry insights, and collaboration opportunities. Josh, why is this top of mind for you?
Well, first off, they're talking about CMMC. They're talking about the cybersecurity maturity, like the whole thing that the DoD wrote. I actually helped write it, worked with SCI and DoD. I was a member of the working groups, argued a lot with DoD and SCI, and it was a long and involved process. It's a fascinating standard. I actually like CMMC a lot, but I like it because it's based on 853 and 800-171. Irrespectively, this coalition, this group, it's either a nonprofit designed to help people or a nonprofit designed to profit off of them. Oh, but it's a nonprofit. That doesn't matter. Okay, the members of a nonprofit can help because they can set the standard and they can be the only ones to meet the standard. So, and I'm not accusing them of that. I'm just stating that it has happened in the past. Dave, I'm sure you've seen similar things like that before. Yeah. So we'll see. Look, their actions are going to be louder than their words in the long run. Okay, but let's be honest. Can they help smaller MSPs and MSSPs? Absolutely. Even if they're there for their own betterment, can they help them? Yes, absolutely. Because some of the things, the open source things that they're going to have to share, those best practices, those tools, those products, those ideas and processes, they can help. Okay, so I'm not like, it's not overpowering like this is bad, but I'm cautious. I want to make sure that it's actually a nonprofit that's actually going to benefit the entire industry, not just themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a quick shout out to the three founding members that were part of the press release. That would be Summit 7, Neo Systems, and Qzara, if I got the pronunciation right on that last one. Apologies if I didn't. All right, well, that's our top of mind headline for the day. But now it's time to move on to our InfoSec topic of the week, presenting our big idea: insecurity, supply chain security, how moving accountability upstream helps and hurts MSSPs. One of the most significant takeaways of the White House's recently unveiled National Cybersecurity Strategy is the assertion that software developers, OEMs, and technology service providers must bear the brunt of the responsibility, rather than end users, for keeping cyber environments secure. With the looming prospect of further legislation and regulations that could impose greater liabilities on software products and services, MSSPs and other cyber services providers must understand where they fit into the overall scheme of things. Are MSSPs an extension of the end user, or are they one of the upstream providers who will be held accountable when cyber attacks occur? In what ways will the burdens on MSSPs be reduced or shifted due to federal efforts around coordinated vulnerability disclosure, SBOM use, and other supply chain security strategies? This segment will explore these key issues. Our guest for this segment is Dave Sobel. Now, that's the Dave that Josh was just alluding to before during Top of Mind. Dave is host of the Business of Tech podcast and YouTube show. Dave is regarded as a leading expert in the delivery of technology services. He owned and operated Evolve Technologies, an IT solution provider and MSP, for over a decade, both acquiring organizations and eventually being acquired. After his MSP experience, he worked for multiple vendors at such companies as Level Platforms, GFI, LogicNow, and SolarWinds, leading community event marketing and product strategies, as well as several M&A activities. Dave has also served on the Executive Council for Managed Services and Emerging Technologies, the Vendor Advisory Council, as founding chair for the mobility community for CompTIA. Dave, so very glad that you could be joining us today. Yep, thanks for being here. And as always, we're going to jump right into things. I alluded to that recently announced White House cybersecurity strategy plan. From an MSSP perspective, should we be optimistic? Are there some lingering concerns? What are your initial reactions since that announcement came down?
Well, thanks for having me, guys. Super excited to get into all this. So I'm one of those people who's excited for more regulation, and I sort of laugh because this isn't working on our own, everybody. Like, I just sort of start from that perspective, and I'm ready to mix it up a little bit and say I'd like some adults in the room to start actually worrying about making sure that the financial incentives align better. And what I mean by this is that, like, look, this ultimately private markets are about financial incentives, right? And on one side, we get why criminals are there. They get it, we get it. But on the other side, we have we have defenders. In many cases, are making money off of defense. And then in a sense, we have customers and generic technologists getting squeezed in the middle. So I'm kind of okay with somebody getting involved with the rules of the road here of how this market's going to work.
Yeah, but Dave, I mean, we've got so many people getting involved. Did you see that yesterday? Was it yesterday? Yeah, today's Thursday, right? Okay, don't like, it's one of those days for me. Sorry. But yesterday, the SEC had their open forum where you could comment on their new cybersecurity rules and regulations. The White House turns them out on a regular basis now. You've got the DoD doing it with CMMC. Like, there's a lot of this going on. There's so many rules and groups that are trying to put out regulatory frameworks, rules, etc. Is it overkill?
Yeah, it sucks to be an adult, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, and I say this because, by the way, there's a lot of rules in, I don't know, being a doctor. There's a lot of rules in being a lawyer. There's a lot of rules in being an accountant. I was under the impression that technologists wanted to be respected at the table, at the C-level. And with that comes some rules, like some behaviors, some professionalism, some like stuff you got to do. I would like to be an adult. I want to be treated like one. And by the way, I want to make the money of that prestige. And complexity is some of that. And that's the cost of it. But it's also the opportunity. I like complicated spaces because you can make money there.
Okay, let's go to the next step. How about licensure?
So I'm pro licensure.
Really?
I am 100% on board with this because, I mean, last I checked, the guy that cuts my hair is more licensed than the people that manage data for multi-million-dollar organizations.
Billion. Let's be clear. Billion.
But I even play in S&B, right? So I play a lot in S&B and mid-market. Like, any Joe Crab Shack can hang out his sign, and customers can't tell the difference between anybody. But I can definitely get a sense of, I don't know, does my doctor, my lawyer, the guy who works on my car, the guy who cuts my hair, the guy who sells me a car, the guy who sells me a house, all of those people have some. But we're a special flower in technology? Absolutely not. I'm 100% on board with that. And again, because adding this adds professionalism, adds value to what I'm delivering, and cha-ching, it makes me money.
All right. Well, now, Dave, you said that you're all in favor of some more rules, but the question becomes what rules are going to apply for MSSP or MSSP type businesses? Because that goes back to one of the initial questions I posed in my introduction, which is, where do managed security service providers fall in that supply chain between, most upstream and most downstream? Is there going to be more liability on them? Are they considered an extension of the end user? Are they considered more of a technology services provider that they could actually find themselves dealing with more accountability? I think the definition right now of where they fit in the supply chain is maybe a little murky. So how do we suss that out?
I don't know, bottom of the pile of S. Like, I mean, like, so let's look at this from an actual liability perspective. You ask, are they going to take on more? Could they take on more? They've got it all right now. So I think of it like the Star Wars trash compactor, right? On one side, you have customers that have all of the liability ultimately, but are trying to transfer that to service providers, because that literally is the definition of providing services. You are assuming some level of risk. It's non-zero, and you're going to determine that. But on the other side of this, you have all of the vendor community and the rest of the supply chain upstream who absolutely take none of it. Right now, I mean, have you signed an end user license agreement recently? It's so multi-level of their ability to push back and push it all onto the provider that they're just being squeezed, in that trash compactor at the service provider level. So from my perspective, if I'm putting on my service provider hat, I'm saying, well, can I take more? No, I can't take any more. I would rather some of that get moved to the vendor as is appropriate for the things they do. And by the way, if we look at every other market, you think about car manufacturing, right? Faults in cars, they have liability for, if it's and a process for that. But in software, it's like, well, whatever. Like that isn't viable long term for the service providers being squeezed in the middle.
Yeah, and it's a really good point. You've got, with cloud, we got the shared responsibility model. I'm responsible for this, you're responsible for that. But with service providers adding another layer, cloud service providers like, ooh, give it to them. Let them be responsible for everything. And the customer's like, look, I'm not a tech person. I'm making widgets. You're responsible for my tech. And if anything goes wrong, you're responsible for it as well. But then there's the third problem, which is that a lot of service providers, MSPs and MSSPs, do indemnification clauses which limit their liability to 1 month of service, 2 months of service, something like that. Realistically, at the end of the day, everybody's playing hot potato, and the end is the potato's out in the pond somewhere. Okay, we're actually not leaving liability anywhere. This is caused.
Right.
I've been an expert witness in some of those cases, and this is causing significant problems when it comes to medical information. And I was involved in a case where medical information was lost, and what do we do? Okay, who's responsible for that, for those HIPAA claims and for that liability and everything else? It went to the state Supreme Court. That's how bad it was. Okay. So you're talking about, and then with CMMC, they actually list liability to the named subcontractors in the contract. Okay, well, what if I use another layer of subcontractors? They're not named in the contract. Can I put the liability on them, and then they don't have to be CMMC certified? Like this gets complex. And wait, but there's more. Cyber insurance. It goes up 300% year over year, and it sucks. And they're going to start testing you to see whether you meet their standards. It's not going to be just a one-question questionnaire anymore. It's going to be an actual pen test or some semblance of a pen test to see if you meet it. This is a very complex question. And I apologize. I didn't come on here to say I have an answer. I'm just saying it's crazy complex. Dave, but you have an answer, right? Please have an answer, please.
Well, I mean, by the way, my answer is like, I like complicated problems because that's where there are services opportunities, right? So I have to balance that. But I always because I come at this as a general technologist. I don't position as a security guy. I am a guy who is in the business of helping companies with their technology needs, of which security is a component. Right?
Of course.
That is a component. But by the way, it's the bit I hate the most. Like, if I could, because what I want to do with my customers is I want them to give me $1 and I make $1.25 for them with technology. That's what I wanted. That's my ultimate ideal use of technology, is make their business better. Right? That's the point.
Increase their productivity to make their business better.
Security is a cost line item to all of that. It does not accelerate things. It actually is at best maintaining, and at worst an impediment to that ability to generate the 25-cent profit. Now, we can have a whole argument over that, right?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Right. And by the way, savvy, smart, but the customer doesn't care, right? The customer doesn't care. The customer just wants the $1.25 for the $1 of technology. And I've got and particularly the smaller the customer gets, the much more difficult it is to have the right amount of money for all of this stuff. And it gets squeezed really fast,
100%.
right? So if you're just looking at it from a proportion perspective, like, it can become just untenable just to even do some of the basics when your budget just gets that much smaller. And that's where I look at it and say, like, I want better rules of the road so that it is proportional, in the right places. We talk about like a cloud provider. Like, I want to work with good cloud providers because they have the big budget for all of the security components of that the typical, 100-person, 50-person law firm doesn't have, and by the way, can't get, because that's just not in their wheelhouse, right? And I want to make sure that the proportions are right.
Yeah, you've got economy of scale with the big cloud providers, and they've got such, it's not slop, but it's a little bit extra here and a little bit extra there and a little bit extra there, means that they can buy huge products and apply them to all of their customers. They've got so much extra. What would account for? Oh, that gets lost in the noise of that line item, of that budget item for a 100-person law firm sorry, for a 10,000-person cloud provider. Sort of repertoire stable is the entire budget of a 100-person law firm. Okay, not just the security budget, it's the entire budget. So I get your point, and it makes sense. It's great to work with the big companies that can offer these things at reduced prices, lost leaders, things you can make a profit off of and provide incredible value to your customers, is what you're saying, if I hear you correctly. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately that. I mean, by the way, that's the point, right? That if I'm a because I come at this from the I am trying to provide good technology to small and mid-market companies. And so I'm working within that bound, and that's the bid. And I know I'm not crazy. I know I have to invest in security to do that.
To be clear, your crazy is totally separate from this issue.
Also fair. But what I'm getting at is that my crazy does not say I'm not going to spend money there. But that's my point, right? Is that I'm not one of those people that's saying like, I'm not going to spend any money on security. That's not the bit that it makes my job of making the extra 25% return. Like, it's not the bit that drives that necessarily, and it's definitely not the easy bit to drive that bit. It doesn't drive new membership, doesn't drive new revenue, it doesn't drive new, e-com acquisition, like whatever that is. And I get all you security guys that always, maybe. Like, it's tougher.
It is. But my maybe was not from that. I actually work pretty significantly with a lot of MSPs and MSSPs. I'm very active on the Reddit forums. I'm very active in a lot of other channel futures and everything else. I remember back when it was MSP Mentor. Okay, remember that? Mm-hmm. And all those.
Yeah, very much.
I'm
that old too. Get the grace.
I'm very active with a lot of them. I find that they're really our canary in the coal mine for a lot of things going on. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I love them. I love them dearly because they do so much good work. So many of them are so dedicated to doing good work, and I love it. But, a lot of them these days are using security as their sales advantage. So they are seeing the benefit for themselves as well as for their customers. So I'm going to argue with you just a little bit in that security and compliance are really the new differentiators for MSPs and MSSPs. At least that's what I see from talking to them about it. Okay. And that's a different topic. It's not really on topic here, but I just wanted to point it out.
And you're not wrong, but actually what I'll push back on and say is the top performers in the space are not leading with that. They're actually having business value conversation about exactly what I talked about at the buck of spend, $1.25 back. That's the that's the top performers on that. So that's where because I'm looking for what are the maximum roads to drive that revenue through their profit and loss of this provider, and it's by tying yourself back to customer revenue.
Can I clarify something?
That's the top performer.
Can I clarify something? I heard you say top performer, and I agree with you. I just want to point out that doesn't necessarily mean the biggest. Okay?
100%. You and I simpatico there. Totally top performer. I'm looking for profitability, well-run business machine, not biggest.
Yeah, and because a lot of people mistake that and conflate that. I didn't say you did. I just wanted to be very clear on that to our listeners.
It's a very fair clarification, yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of the biggest MSPs and MSSPs are doing this on a formulaic basis. They're churning and burning, and that's fine. That's their thing. But realistically, I have found, and this is a personal anecdote, please don't take it as gospel, that the top performing MSPs and MSSPs are the ones that have a bit of formulaic, a bit of customization and a lot of customer service so that they can understand your business and how they can make you more productive and better in the long run. And that's, again, that's my anecdote. That's my experience. Dave, you may have different.
I actually would agree, because, by the way, that translates into the business value bit. You're much more about working with customers, the customization. I mean, I've always said it's old school consulting. When you're good consultants in the in the productivity layer, right, where you're actually working in their business process, what is driving their end outcomes, that's the best bits. Those are the best performing ones. And by the way, those oftentimes the bulk of the market may fall back on, well, we'll help you with secure, because, by the way, everybody does need that. Again, not crazy. I know that you need, you have to do the right level of bits. I always, the lock analogy is always great, right? Because everyone likes to talk about, you got to sell locks. The difference between physical in this space is I don't have criminals banging on my door every 4 milliseconds testing the door in a completely automated process, as opposed to the physical burglar who has to wander the neighborhood, right? Mm-hmm. So, of course, I'm not crazy. Put a lock on that door, because the automated attack is so persistent.
Yeah. Dave, we had a guest on our show just last week who specialized in managed cyber threat intelligence. And one of the points that he made to us is that he's spending an increased amount of time lately on threat intelligence around everything supply chain. And it's become so much more important lately to get a sense and visibility of your client's expanded ecosystem more than ever before, because there's so much third-party risk that it's become a major challenge and a major priority to now understand better the threats surrounding not just directly your client, but indirectly through all of these various third parties within the supply chain. So I'm wondering, if we were to close our eyes right now and imagine a utopian cyber society where the government has stepped in now, and through these increased efforts of introducing more accountability at upstream in the supply chain, let's say they're successful in some of those efforts, where would you like to most see the burden relieved from MSSPs as it's currently situated today? Where do they need the most help, where you would like to shift the responsibility? What would be at the top of your list there?
It's ultimately, and I'll try and, again, not a security guy trying to use security parlance, which is dangerous, but I would sort of say, like, you're looking for more root cause analysis, right? I want to actually get to preventing attacks and preventing the avenues much more than I do. I use a very simple example, right? We kind of all have agreed both spam and phishing are bad, right? That we're not in that business. But we're all running email on a 40-plus-year-old technology called SMTP. We could just fix that. If Microsoft and Google decide that they were going to get rid of it, we would solve the vast majority of that problem, right? Now, we'd wipe out an entire space of mail protection security products, but we'd actually get to root cause analysis and solve the problem. But we get, heaven forbid, it's so hard to do. We can't possibly change the underlying technology. And I'll laugh and go, I don't know, last I checked, we moved from SD to HD television because there was money to be made in it. We moved, from AM to FM to internet radio because there's reasons for it. Like, we've moved from print to digital for money. Like, we could do this. We just aren't. And so there's a certain degree of, like, in your utopia, I want to get more toward root cause analysis of, like, let's actually work to solve the problems versus keep slapping Band-Aids on this that get pushed down where, we're just sort of continually addressing with more tools. That would be my version of this.
I mean, I'm going to push back a little bit, but look, 3D television never took off because nobody bought the damn things, okay? And they didn't produce enough content.
On board.
And, DNSSEC came out, and it was a beautiful, beautiful solution for DNS. Had some issues, but, Dan Kaminsky pushed pretty hard on that. Even had he built a company. I forget the name of it. I still have the lighter he gave out. where he pre-built DNS servers and you just grab them and go, and nobody really picked it up significantly. There's some pickup of it, but significantly because nobody picked it up, so nobody else picked it up. There has to be you have to build up enough critical mass of people doing something. And so you're right. If Google and Microsoft decided, hey, we're not going to use SMTP anymore, we're going to build a whole new mail subsystem, and it's going to be all brandy new, and it's all perfect, and it's encrypted from end to end, and nobody can touch it, and nobody can break it, and then you'll have Google and Microsoft doing it, and they're enough of a tipping point to do it on their own. Do we want that? That's another question, because that's incredibly...
Take my money, please. Give me the fry emoji right now. I will pay for that right now.
Yeah, but it's monopolistic. Do we want antitrust to get involved there?
Or offer me the option, right?
That's valid.
But my point is that, like, offer me the option. Right? You want it to go to market? Yeah, I'll give those providers $10 a month for a second version in email that tells me these are actually all authenticated.
Because, I mean, a lot of MSPs and MSSPs, especially MSPs, are getting really pissed off because Microsoft is taking away a lot of their dollars. M365 has been their mainstay for how many years now? And the licensing...
Now we're a whole other topic on margins and how you actually build businesses on top of that. Because for every one of that whining, I can show you providers that are killing it.
Okay,
doing technology implementations, assessments, working in the productivity layer, and killing it on top of that.
Dave, when are you inviting me on your show? Because I want to have the discussion with you, okay?
Podcast 2.
All right. So fair enough. That's where we'll continue this conversation. Josh, we'll meet you on your show and you can continue this fine debate. But for now, we're just about out of time for this segment, but we've left just enough time to do one of our favorite recurring bits on the show, which we call We Speak Geek. So this is a show and tell game where we embrace the geek culture that people typically associate with the cyber nerd community because, you know, at the end of the day, everybody's a little geeky about something. And so, Dave, I ask you, how do you speak geek?
I am a huge retro video game nerd. In terms of collecting and keeping, operating some of these old systems. In fact, you can see a little bit of it in my set just here. I've got an old Apple IIgs, my original childhood Commodore 64 monitor. I had to replace the bread box, but that's my original. I got a Virtual Boy, I got a Power Glove, and the one I got to rotate for, the old school Coleco Astrocade. It is a triangular unit with a set of controllers, a racing car control, and a gun, all in a triangular bit with removable cartridges. It dates to the late 70s. I've got a pile of this stuff, and my wife requires me to keep it all in my office so that it does not take over the house. But so I am way into keeping those systems running, even to the point of, like, we at least, you know, periodically I get my friends together who bring their kids over, and we show off all of these old gaming systems that we grew up with, just so that they can get a taste of what an old school Nintendo was like, what the original Xbox was like, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because I just played for the first time in I don't know how many decades Duck Hunt using the old Nintendo. I don't know what they called it. It was just like the gun, the light gun.
NES. I've got a working zapper and an old school professional CRT to keep it all alive right here in my office.
The really obscure one that I have like a vague memory of, because you mentioned the Power Glove too, which I feel like that was like one of those that like didn't really take off. Like it didn't really end up
because it didn't work very well.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But I also remember there used to be this one. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, where there was almost like a robot accessory, and it would spin these gyroscopes, and there were certain games. Yeah, okay, you know what I'm talking about.
I don't own a Rob. I do own the Power Pad, which was the early like pad that you roll out on the floor, and it was a 4x4 set of squares, kind of like Twister, and you could run on it.
Do like different dance games and stuff like that.
I've never invested in a Rob just because there's only like 2 games that work with it.
Right.
I have eyed it a couple of times.
I mean, that would be a real like blast from the past. That's all right. Favorite old nostalgic video game of all time. Hard to pick one, but what would it be?
I'm going to go a little deep cut to see if listeners know it. I am a ridiculous fan of blazing lasers on the TurboGrafx 16. Right, I'm going deep, and if anybody knows it, it is
I played that
shmups.
30 years ago?
Is what?
I played that 30 years ago?
Easily. Yeah, that's it's old school because TurboGrafx came out right about the same time.
Is it a scroller, top-down scroller?
It's a vertical shooter, a shmup, as they call it. So it's just got this catchy, great music to it. Like it's just easy for me to pick up when I just want like a quick experience. Like that's sort of my obscure go-to. I own an original TurboGrafx and the card, so that when I emulate it, I feel very validated that I'm not pirating anything.
Well, I'll tell you what. Here's the deal then. Josh can come on your show. All I want to do is I just want to come over to your house one day and just go play video games, and I'll be happy.
It is good fun.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for the first half of the show. But thanks once again, Dave, for being here. Really appreciate it. Fun conversation with the video games and super informative and helpful conversation with the supply chain security discussion. So doubly glad you could be here. As I said, that's going to wrap up the first half of our show, but please, everybody, return for the second half of our episode featuring our big idea in business, sign language, how to write effective security services contracts. That and more coming right up, so we will see you in a moment on the other side.